Belfast, Northern Ireland, 1909. The clouds hang low over the city, thick and grey, the kind that never fully lift. Below them, the River Lagan cuts through the land like a wound that refuses to heal. And on its banks, something is happening that the world has never seen before. Men pour through the iron gates of the Harland and Wolf Shipyard before the sun has fully risen. Thousands of them, every morning, every day. Their boots scrape against wet cobblestone. Their breath hangs in the cold air. Their faces carry the kind of exhaustion that sleep alone cannot cure. These are men who build things too large to fully comprehend. Riveters, platers, caulkers, engineers. They do not marvel at what they are constructing. They are too close to it, too deep inside it. They see only the piece in front of them, the bolt to be tightened, the steel to be shaped. But from a distance, what is rising before them is something extraordinary. A ship. Not just any ship. The ship. An idea drawn in pencil on drafting paper by men who believed that the ocean could be conquered, that nature could be outwitted. That size itself was a kind of armor. The plans call for a vessel nearly 300 meters long, a floating city, a machine so immense, so carefully engineered, that the men who designed her felt comfortable using a word that no sensible sailor would ever whisper lightly. Unsinkable. The word spreads easily through the boardrooms of the White Star Line, through the dockside pubs of Belfast, through the pages of newspapers hungry for a story of ambition. The Titanic, they say, is more than a ship. She is proof of what mankind can do when it stops doubting itself, a monument to progress built from iron and fire and the sweat of working men who will never sail on her. Day after day, the structure grows. Steel ribs arch upward into the sky. Gantries creak under the weight of machinery. The sound of hammers striking iron fills the air from dawn until dark, a relentless rhythm that the people of Belfast learn to hear the way they hear their own heartbeats, constantly, unconsciously, always there. The Titanic does not look like a ship yet. She looks like a cathedral being built by men who worship at the altar of industry, a skeleton of ambition climbing. Then comes the moment that makes it real. May 31st, 1911. Belfast Harbour. The crowd is enormous. Tens of thousands of people press against one another along the waterfront, straining for a view. Children sit on their fathers' shoulders. Women shade their eyes against the glare. The atmosphere is charged with the particular electricity of witnessing something historic, even if no one can fully explain why. And then, slowly, the Titanic moves. She slides from the slipway into the river with a grace that seems impossible for something so enormous. The crowd erupts, horns sound, hats sail into the air. Grown men weep and are not embarrassed. The ship that was once only an idea, only a number on a page, only a promise spoken in a boardroom, is now real. She is breathing. She is in the water. She exists. But she is not yet finished. Not by a long way. The months that follow are months of obsessive detail. The hull is the easy part. What goes inside her is something else entirely. Craftsmen arrive from across Britain and Ireland, each one a master of their trade. Cabinet makers from London, carpet layers from Belfast, painters, upholsterers, electricians, plumbers. The interior of the Titanic is built the way a palace is built, by hand, slowly, with deliberate care. No expense is spared. That is the instruction that comes down from the White Star Line, and the workers who carry it out take it seriously. Carved oak paneling, Stained glass, velvet upholstery, silverware engraved with the White Star insignia, 400 miles of electrical cable, thousands of light bulbs, a swimming pool, a squash court, a Turkish bath, elevators, the first ever installed on an ocean liner. By the spring of 1912, she is ready. The largest moving object ever created by human hands, waiting in Southampton for the tide and the passengers to carry her west. April 10th, 1912. Southampton docks, 6 o'clock in the morning. Long before the gangways are lowered, the docks are already alive. Porters haul mountains of luggage. Stokers and engineers and stewards arrive carrying their papers and their kit bags, their eyes still heavy with sleep. The Titanic towers above the dock like a cliff face, her hull black, her superstructure white. Her 4 funnels, 3 of them functional, 1 purely decorative, pointing at the morning sky with a kind of defiance. Then the passengers begin to arrive. From the first-class berths come the names that fill the society pages. Benjamin Guggenheim, American mining magnate, dressed as though he is attending a dinner rather than boarding a ship. Isidor Straus, co-owner of Macy's department store, traveling with his wife Ida, who refuses, it is said, to go anywhere without him. John Jacob Astor IV, perhaps the wealthiest man aboard, with his new young wife beside him. These are people for whom comfort is not a luxury, but an expectation. But the docks also hold a different kind of passenger. Down toward the stern, third-class travelers line up in family groups, clutching paper tickets and cardboard suitcases held shut with twine. They have come from Ireland, from Sweden, from Syria, from Lebanon, from the villages and cities of a dozen different nations. They speak dozens of languages and share exactly one dream: America, a new life, a door left open that they are desperate to step through before it closes. At noon precisely, the whistles of the Titanic sound across Southampton, 3 long blasts that can be heard for miles. The ropes are cast off, the tugs strain, and the ship slowly, deliberately, impossibly begins to move. Those left on the dock wave until their arms ache. Some will spend years wondering whether they should have been on board. Others will spend years grateful they were not. But in that moment, no one is thinking about what might go wrong. The Titanic is leaving. The dream is beginning. Life aboard, the first days at sea. For the passengers of first class, the Titanic is less a ship than a philosophy made physical. The idea that wealth should be insulated from discomfort, from ugliness, from the rough texture of the real world. Walking the corridors of A deck, you might forget entirely that you are floating on the open Atlantic. The wood panels are warm, the light is soft, the carpets swallow your footsteps whole. The grand staircase is its own kind of spectacle, a double helix of carved oak rising through the ship's center, topped by an ornate glass dome that floods the space below with pale, shifting light. First-class passengers come to simply stand in it and look upward. Photographs are taken, promises are made, flirtations begin on its steps. The dining saloon seats 500. The menus are printed in French. Dinner begins with oysters and moves through 10 courses before arriving at dessert, served on white china, ringed with the White Star insignia. The wines are selected with the same care given to the navigation charts. Conversations drift from business deals to gossip, to the strange, pleasant absence of anything urgent. In second class, the mood is different, but no less warm. The cabins are tidy and well lit, the meals plentiful, the dining room comfortable enough, that many passengers later admitted they had expected something far worse. There is a sense of middle passage in more ways than one. Between the gilded world above and the crowded world below, these are people making their way from one life to another with cautious optimism. And deep in the belly of the ship, in third class, the atmosphere is something else entirely. Noisier, more alive, more desperate in its way. Families crowd around long tables in the general room, eating meals they have not cooked themselves for the first time in years. Children chase each other through the corridors, laughing in languages that no one else aboard understands. Old men play cards. Young women write letters they will not be able to post for another week. And through the steel walls of their quarters, they can feel the engines, a constant, low, powerful thrumming that means you are moving. You are going somewhere. It is really happening. Outside, all around, always, the ocean. By day, the North Atlantic shimmers. The Titanic cuts through it cleanly, sending white water curling away from either side of her bow. Seabirds wheel overhead in her wake. The horizon is a hard, clean line. By night, the sea turns black, and the stars above it multiply until the sky seems impossibly full of light. Passengers stand at the railings for long minutes, saying nothing, held by something they cannot name. It is, by every measure, a perfect crossing. So far, the warnings. They begin arriving on April 12th. Radio messages, transmitted in Morse code, from other ships crossing the same waters. Ice, they say. Fields of pack ice. Growlers. Low-slung chunks invisible in poor light. Bergs. The warnings pile up on the Titanic's radio room desk like unreturned letters. Some are passed to the bridge. Some are pinned to the board. Some are read and set aside. The radio operators, Harold Bride and Jack Phillips, are not naval officers. They are employees of the Marconi Company, hired to transmit passenger messages, congratulations, love letters, business wires. The flood of personal correspondence from 2,000 passengers keeps them busy day and night, and the ice warnings must compete for attention with a woman in first class who wants to tell her sister in New York that she has arrived safely, before she has arrived at all. On the bridge, Captain Edward John Smith listens. He is 62 years old, white-bearded, steady-eyed. He has crossed the North Atlantic more than 50 times. He has sailed through worse than this. He maintains course. He maintains speed. There is a schedule to keep and a reputation to protect, and an owner's desire, whispered rather than spoken aloud, to arrive in New York ahead of schedule. 22 knots. The Titanic drives westward. Sunday, April 14th, is the finest day of the crossing. The sky is a pale, unblemished blue. The sea is uncommonly still, a mill-pond stillness that experienced sailors know to read as a warning in itself. When the surface is this flat, there is no spray at the base of an iceberg, no telltale white fringe to catch the eye in the dark. The ocean offers no clues. The temperature drops throughout the afternoon. By evening, passengers retreating inside comment on the sudden cold, pulling coats tighter and ordering hot drinks. The thermometer above the bridge falls steadily. The stars, when they appear, are extraordinary, so crisp and numerous that several passengers stay on deck purely to look at them. At 9:40 in the evening, a message arrives from the Mesaba, reporting dense pack ice directly in the Titanic's path. The message is received. It is never delivered to the bridge. At 10:55, another vessel, the Californian, attempts to send a warning. The Titanic's radio operator overwhelmed with passenger messages, cuts the transmission short. The Californian's operator shuts down his set for the night and goes to bed. The ship sails on, 22 knots, into the dark. 11:40 p.m. Sunday, April 14th, 1912. The lookouts in the crow's nest, Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee, have been staring into darkness for hours. They have no binoculars. The pair assigned to their post is locked in a cabinet below, and the officer who holds the key has left the ship in Southampton. They are scanning the black horizon with their bare eyes, which is like trying to read a book held at arm's length in a room with no lights. The sea is so still that they can hear almost nothing. The bow of the ship barely disturbs the surface. There is no wind. There is no sound. There is only the steady, quiet hum of 3,000 tons of machinery below their feet. Then Fleet sees something. A shape in the dark. Not quite a shadow. Not quite a solid thing. A darkening of the darkness, rising from the water directly ahead. He grabs the bell cord and strikes it 3 times. Then he reaches for the telephone. Iceberg, right ahead. On the bridge, First Officer William Murdoch does not hesitate. Hard to starboard. All stop. Reverse full. The orders leave his mouth in the same second that the thought forms. The Titanic's rudder turns. The propellers slow. 3,000 tons of steel begins, very slowly, to swing. It is not enough. 37 seconds after Frederick Fleet rings the bell, the Titanic strikes the iceberg. Not head-on, along her starboard side. The ice scrapes and punches through the hull plates below the waterline in a line running more than 90 meters. Buckled seams, fractured rivets, holes punched through steel that was supposed to be impenetrable. Above decks, the impact registers as almost nothing. A faint shudder, a distant grinding sound, like gravel being raked beneath the hull. A vibration that stops almost as soon as it begins. Passengers in the dining room look up from their late-night drinks. A few note the engines, going quiet. Most return to their conversations within seconds. In the boiler rooms, it is a different story. Water floods through the forward compartments in a wall. Men scramble for the ladders, hauling each other upward through the rising flood, their voices lost in the rush of incoming sea. The pumps engage. The pumps are not enough. They were never going to be enough. The Titanic was designed to survive flooding in any 4 of her 16 watertight compartments. The iceberg has opened 5. Thomas Andrews, the ship's chief architect, the man who designed her, who knows every rivet and every number by heart, stands in the forward compartments with Captain Smith and does the mathematics in his head. He does not need a calculator. He does not need a second opinion. The answer is already there, clear and terrible and final. The ship will sink. She has perhaps 2 hours. He keeps his voice steady. He states the fact plainly. Around him, the lights still burn. The engines still run. Somewhere above their heads, the orchestra is playing in the first-class lounge. Glasses clink. Someone laughs. The Titanic does not feel like a ship that is dying. But she is. The evacuation. The order goes out. Wake the crew. Prepare the lifeboats. Begin boarding passengers. But the men tasked with carrying this out face a problem that no amount of training has prepared them for. The passengers do not want to leave. From the outside, on a calm, cold, star-filled night, the Titanic looks solid. She looks fine. She looks like the safest place in the world compared to a small wooden lifeboat being lowered 30 meters to a dark ocean. Officers plead with passengers to board. Women in evening gowns shake their heads. Men in dinner jackets put their wives into the boats and step back, certain they will be reunited at the gangway in a few hours when all of this turns out to be a drill. The first lifeboat departs with 65 empty seats. The music continues. The Titanic's 8-piece orchestra moves through the ship, playing ragtime, playing hymns, playing whatever seems right for a night that seems determined to resist the idea that anything is wrong. They play because they have been asked to play. They play because the sound of instruments is better than the sound of panic. They play knowing, at least some of them, what is coming. Meanwhile, in the lower sections of the ship, the situation is already past managing. Water is rising through the corridors. Third-class passengers who have followed the rules, who have waited where they were told to wait, find doors locked and stairwells blocked, not out of malice or not entirely. The ship's design requires gates to separate the classes, to satisfy American immigration law. But on a sinking ship, those gates become something else. Families press against them. Voices rise in a dozen languages. Children are lifted over. Some passengers find their way up. Many do not. The bow is dropping now, slowly, but visibly, to anyone watching from the right angle. The water at the stern has climbed a little higher than it should be. The deck is no longer quite level. At 12:45 in the morning, the first distress rocket fires into the sky, a white star blooming against the black, then another and another. Miles away, the Californian's crew watches lights on the horizon and debates among themselves what they might mean. The watch officer decides they are probably company signals, ships communicating in private code. He does not wake the radio operator. He does not raise the captain. He watches the lights and waits for them to make sense. They will never make sense to him. Not for the rest of his life. The final hour. By 1:30 in the morning, the bow is underwater. The angle of the deck is unmistakable now. Objects slide, glasses fall. The great ship that was designed to be a steady, stable city on the sea is tilting forward as if reaching for the ocean floor. The remaining lifeboats are lowered, some full, some still dangerously under capacity, as people on deck refuse to believe that the edge of the railing is where they must now make the most important decision of their lives. The temperature of the water below is -2 degrees Celsius, barely above freezing. A human body immersed in water that cold loses motor function within minutes and consciousness within 15. No one says this. No one needs to. At 2:05 in the morning, the last lifeboat leaves the Titanic. There are more than 1,500 people still aboard. In the first-class lounge, Benjamin Guggenheim and his valet have changed out of their life jackets and into their finest evening clothes. If they are to die tonight, Guggenheim has apparently decided they will do it properly. He passes word to a steward to tell his wife in New York, no woman shall be left on board this ship because Ben Guggenheim was a coward. The bow is gone, completely submerged. The stern rises. The propellers, 3 of them, each weighing over 30 tons, lift clear of the water and hang in the night air against the stars. People scramble aft, climbing the sloping deck on hands and knees, sliding back, grabbing at railings and ropes and each other. Everything that is not bolted down, furniture, crockery, luggage, the contents of 2,000 lives, crashes forward in a single relentless avalanche. At 2:17 in the morning, the lights go out. 1 second, the Titanic is there, lit from bow to stern, defiant, enormous, burning against the dark. The next second, she is only a silhouette, a shape against the stars, a presence without illumination. At 2:20 in the morning, a sound crosses the water that none of the people in the lifeboats will ever fully describe. Not an explosion, not a crash, something bigger than both. The sound of the largest ship ever built tearing apart under its own weight. The bow section pulls away from the stern and plunges. The stern settles for a moment, just a moment, and then it too begins its long descent. 3 minutes. That is all it takes. The Titanic, from keel to funnel, 469 feet of human achievement, disappears beneath the surface of the North Atlantic and sinks for 2 miles before coming to rest on the ocean floor, where she remains to this day. What is left behind is silence and darkness and 1,500 voices. Dawn, April 15th, 1912. When the Carpathia arrives, 4 hours and 20 minutes after the Titanic sends her last radio signal, the sea has given almost nothing back. Some deck chairs, a scattering of cork life rings, a field of debris so vast and so sparse that it seems like a cruel trick, evidence of something enormous that has left almost no trace. The survivors come up the rope ladders in 2s and 3s. They are wrapped in blankets and unable to stop shaking. Some of them have been in the lifeboats for nearly 4 hours in temperatures that hovered near zero. Some are still wearing evening dress. Some have lost their shoes. Many have lost their families. Almost all of them are silent in a way that goes deeper than shock. A silence that comes from having seen something that cannot be unseen, something the mind continues to refuse even after the eyes have confirmed it. 705 people are pulled from the sea. More than 1,500 are not. The world receives the news in stages, and in each stage the disbelief is renewed. First, the Titanic has struck an iceberg. Then, the Titanic is sinking. Then, the Titanic has sunk. And finally, hours later, the number, 1,500 dead. A number so large it takes time to become real. And when it does become real, it becomes something that shakes the early 20th century to its foundations. Inquiries are launched on both sides of the Atlantic. Committees are convened. Officers testify. Survivors are interviewed. The questions that emerge are not merely technical, though the technical failures are many, but moral. Why were there not enough lifeboats? Why were the warnings ignored? Why did a ship that so many called Unsinkable fail in 2 hours and 40 minutes after striking ice at a speed any reasonable officer might have reduced? The answers are uncomfortable. The lifeboat capacity was legal and deliberately limited because White Star believed that too many lifeboats would signal to passengers that the ship might need them. The speed was maintained because there was pressure, spoken or unspoken, to arrive on schedule. The ice warnings were real, numerous, and largely disregarded by a ship whose size had become a kind of religion. The Titanic sank because human beings confused bigness with safety, because they built something magnificent and decided that magnificence was the same as invincibility, because the ocean, cold, indifferent, immeasurably old, was never consulted. What remains? In September 1985, a joint American-French expedition led by oceanographer Robert Ballard located the wreck of the Titanic sitting on the floor of the North Atlantic at a depth of nearly 4,000 meters. The images that came back from the deep confirmed what most people had suspected but never seen. She had broken in two, just as the survivors had always said. The bow section rested nearly 800 meters from the stern, both sections surrounded by a debris field stretching for miles across the ocean floor. Personal belongings, shoes, always the shoes, singled out by researchers because leather survives where human bodies do not. Bottles of wine, unbroken, a bathtub, a child's marble. The wreck has been visited dozens of times since. It is deteriorating. Iron-eating bacteria are consuming the hull at a rate that makes some scientists believe the structure will be unrecognizable within decades. The Titanic is being slowly returned to its elements, 4,000 meters below the reach of sunlight, in water so cold and so dark that it is almost like another world. But the name endures. Long after the ship itself is gone, the name will endure. There are 1,503 names on the Titanic's official death toll. Each of them is a person who woke on the morning of April 14th, 1912, and made ordinary plans. What to eat for dinner, which book to finish, what they would do when they arrived in New York. Each of them had a life that extended in both directions, a past full of particular memory, a future full of particular hope. And each of them was ended by 37 seconds between the moment a bell was rung in a crow's nest and the moment a ship struck ice. The Titanic was not sunk by fate. She was not sunk by nature. She was sunk by the oldest of human weaknesses, the certainty that we have finally built something the world cannot break. The ocean knew better. The ocean always knows better.